Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV. Back in October, we did a series about how your television is spying on you. And that spying usually involves taking images of what's on the screen, including things that are plugged into your television via HDMI. And a few weeks ago, the Texas Attorney General filed suit against 5 of the major TV manufacturers over this technology that spies on its viewers. And in this video, we're going to take a look at this lawsuit. There's already been a temporary restraining order issued on Hisense, so we'll talk about that as well. And this is certainly a brewing story, so let's get to it. Now, before we dive into this week's topic, I do want to let you know that this video is being brought to you by all of you. That includes everyone who watches and subscribes to this channel on a regular basis, but also those of you who have contributed to the channel either through my donor box page at Lon.TV/support, through my Patreon, through the YouTube membership program, and through Floatplane, and of course the super thanks that you can click on down below too. All of those things help keep this channel growing, and I greatly appreciate your support. So let's get into this week's topic. Now, the Texas Attorney General has filed 5 separate lawsuits, one for each of the companies that he is suing here. So the 5 companies targeted are Sony, Samsung, LG, Hisense, and TCL. All of these cases were brought in a Texas state court, so any outcomes here only apply to Texas residents. It doesn't apply to the rest of the country here. And already, the Attorney General got a temporary restraining order against Hisense, who will no longer be able to collect any data or do anything with that data so long as that temporary restraining order is in place. Now, of course, that will get lifted at some point, and if the Attorney General is not successful in his case, those things will get returned to their usual behaviors here. But at the moment, right now, if you have a Hisense TV in Texas, it cannot collect any data from you. Now, what the Texas AG does in each lawsuit is define what the problem is here, which of course is automatic content recognition technology. And if you're not familiar with this, what happens is that your television takes an image along with audio samples of what is on the screen. The frequency of that sampling varies from one model to the next, but some will do several samples per second. And then what it does is it builds a content fingerprint from what it captured. It uploads that fingerprint to a server where it is matched against the media library, and then that data is sold to advertisers and data brokers. And again, this does not only include what's on a smart TV app, but it can also pick up anything that's coming through the television's video system, including video games, which is apparently a very big customer of this data, along with a lot of other stuff. And so in the simplest sense here, it's being used for marketing, but it can also be used to follow you around the internet. So for example, the AG's lawsuit found some marketing materials here where LG is boasting that it can follow its users from their television to TikTok, to LinkedIn, to Facebook. Basically, once you move from one screen to the next, they don't lose track of you. And in the suit here, the AG says LG is collecting data from their TV sets every 10 milliseconds. And in line 41 there, you can see that they're talking about collecting data from HDMI connected devices, something we've been talking about here for a few weeks now. And one other note here, if you look at line 43, is that LG has a special focus on gamers and how they engage with their game consoles. You might be wondering why a lot of the big AAA video game titles have not been all that new and creative lately, and that's because they're buying all this data about what people are doing on their televisions and taking the safe bet because they can see what every kid in America is playing at this point. And this is an area that should be of concern to everybody because although we don't have federal privacy laws in this country, we do have federal privacy regulations regarding children under the age of 13. And if these TVs are collecting data from kids, that's going to be problematic for every TV manufacturer that is using this ACR technology. To be honest with you, I'm surprised that the FTC has not yet gone after these companies for doing this sort of stuff, but perhaps they didn't really know what was going on because they don't have to report this activity to anybody. Additionally, LG is building consumer profiles according to the lawsuit that include their political leanings, their sexual orientation, their health interests, their marital status, their family composition, their age and religion. And of course, you can see what religious programming somebody's watching on the television and assign different flags to that consumer for that. And the LG asserts here, or the AG asserts here, that LG smart TVs are not a passive mode of entertainment, but a relentless surveillance device when these features are enabled. Now, the AG's lawsuits also focus in on informed consent regarding this data collection. Nearly every television that collects data about you requires that you opt in to that collection first. But as the AG asserts in these lawsuits, the system is defaulting towards maximal data extraction because they don't make it easy for users to opt out, but opting in is quite easy. So for example, in the case of LG here, it is a one-click opt-in for enrollment, but it requires 40 clicks spread out across multiple menus to opt out of this data collection. And as I noted in my video with my LG television upstairs, you can see all of these different agreements that you have to go through and click a whole bunch of things to opt out of. And if you decide to opt out of these agreements, what ends up happening here is that your smart television functions are completely disabled. So for example, when I tried to opt out with a click here, it told me that yes, you can opt out, but you're going to lose access to all of the smart functions on your television. And sure enough, after I did that, all of the apps that I tried to load on my television would not load because I had not opted in to their security policies here. So it's just so much easier to opt in for the consumer than to opt out, and also less confusing. So for example, in this LG example here, if I disagree to everything, I still have to click agree to move forward with my disagreement. And again, that can be very confusing to consumers, and that is something that the Attorney General here is bringing up in these lawsuits. Now, if we look at some of the other suits, you can see how crazy some of these screens are. So the one you're looking at here is the TCL screen. You don't have a disagree button, only an agree button. So I guess the process of disagreeing is to uncheck the performance button there and then click agree. If we look at the Hisense screen here, apparently there's no easy way to opt out. You just have one big accept button, and you don't really have a quick path here, which is probably why they got the temporary restraining order only on Hisense and not the other brands. Here is Samsung, again, very similar to the LG, where you've got a bunch of different agreements. You can uncheck agree to all, but you don't have a disagree button, just the skip button. And the AG goes further in the Samsung suit and accuses the company of lying to their customers by saying that Samsung neither collects any video footage nor any content displayed on the device. Now, technically, Samsung is probably right about that, in that they are taking pictures of the screen, but they're hashing it and only sending that fingerprint data to the server for matching. But because the server they're sending it to has such an extensive database, they do know what's on the screen and are technically collecting the data, in my opinion. But this is what they are telling customers, that they're not recording any data from them. Now, out of all the televisions that I've tested and what the AG has tested here, Sony at least gives their users a logical yes or no question. And you can see this screenshot that is in the AG's lawsuit. And the AG is still suing Sony anyhow, but at least Sony gives customers an agree or a disagree, which makes a lot more sense than all of the other TV brands that we've looked at. But as you go through all of this, it is very clear that they're playing some psychological games here with customers, making it really hard to opt out of a system that makes these companies a lot of money. If it was so good, then customers should want to just say yes, but what they've done instead is make it really hard to say no. And of course, when you get that new TV, you just want to get through all the stuff and set it up and get going. So what the AG is asking for in each of these trials is a jury trial. That'll be interesting. And they're also looking for civil penalties of not more than $10,000 per violation. And they're also looking to get temporary restraining orders against every one of these manufacturers. It looks like, again, the only one that's gone through so far is the one against Hisense, likely because of how bad their opt-out process is. And if you're wondering why your TVs cost $200 for a nice big 55-inch television, it's because of this. This data is worth a lot of money, and I'm surprised that Texas is the first state we're seeing actually trying to take some action against this practice of spying on what's on people's televisions. So how do you get out of this? Well, you can opt out. What I would say, and this is something a lot of you have said as well, is disconnect your television from the internet. make it forget all of your Wi-Fi connections. And if you're going to use smart TV apps, the best player right now to do it with is the Apple TV, because it is a more private device. It's also the most expensive TV streaming device, but it's expensive for a reason. It's not collecting all this extra data. Additionally, when you boot up your Apple TV and start installing apps on it, those apps will ask you if they can follow you around the internet, and Apple gives you the choice to say no to those apps and keep your data siloed in the app that you're running on. So those are some of the things you can do. Again, it's impossible not to be tracked these days unless you just run your own server and disconnect yourself from the network completely. But still, a lot of these cheap TVs are doing a lot with your data that you may not be aware of. So we'll keep an eye on this lawsuit. Let me know what you thought down in the comments section. And until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.